Hello everybody, this is another Hot Wheels Collector video. Today we are going to be taking a look at the Proton Saga. Now this is a brand new casting for 2024, and this casting will first debut in the 2024 B case. Now then, I will quickly mention that this card does feature in the 2024 Compact Kings miniseries, and this is card number 3 out of 5 in that set. I would also like to mention that this is card number 41 out of 250 for 2024. Now then, I will quickly mention where I actually found this car then. So I found this car in a local Smyth's toy superstore at the price of £1.69. That's sort of the standard price here in the UK for Hot Wheels mainlines. But anyways, I'd been hearing in Facebook groups for quite a few weeks that they were supposed to be getting some B case. So I went to my local Smyth's toy superstore, and yes, there was a B case out. They had just put it out overnight. I was first in the shop, as on Saturdays I am able to get to my local Smyth's toy superstore first thing in the morning. I could not believe my eyes, and honestly I wasn't expecting it. I thought I'd maybe get the leftovers if I was lucky to even see anything from the B case, but no, every single thing from that case was there, including the very sought after Honda Civic Si and also the Nissan Skyline R30. So I managed to pick up everything I wanted, including the desirable cars, as I've already mentioned, the Honda and the Skyline, as well as all the new recolours and all the new castings. So I literally have everything from the B case that I wanted, and I could not be happier. But anyways, let me give you some facts about the real life car. So in real life, this car has a 1.5 litre inline-4 naturally aspirated engine, and this engine produced around 90 horsepower and 126 newton meters of torque, converting to 93 pound-feet of torque. I will also mention that this car did have a top speed of 103 miles per hour, and that converts to 166 kilometers per hour. And I will also mention that this car's 0 to 60 time has not been tested properly, so we do not know a figure for that, unfortunately. However, I will mention that this car is very light, and it does weigh only 980 kilograms, which converts to 2,160 pounds. And I will also mention that this car was front wheel drive, as you'd probably expect. I would also like to mention that this car did have a 5-speed manual transmission, and I would also like to mention that 1.9 million Proton Sagas have been sold, and 1.2 million of these were the first generation, which is the car we are looking at today. I would also like to mention that this car is based on the second generation of Mitsubishi Lancer, and hence it does share quite a few components from that car. And I would also like to mention that the first generation of Proton Saga was produced between 1985 and 1992. And when this car was new, it cost 17,575 RM. Now RM is the Malaysian currency, and that converts to 2,990 pounds, which converts to $3,770. And when inflation is taken into consideration, this car cost, when it was new, £11,200, which converts to $14,100, which converts to 65,940 RM. And now this car is valued at 32,800 RM, which converts to £5,600, and that converts to $7,100. But anyways, that is it for the facts about this car, so now let's move on to the showcase of the Hot Wheels model. Alright, so kicking off this showcase then, we'll first of all take a look at the side of this car, and I will first of all mention the wheel choice on this thing. So this car is rolling on the Aerodisc wheels, which first debuted in 2018, and on this car they have been painted in chrome. I would like to mention that both the front and rear wheels of this car are the exact same size, unlike some Hot Wheels models where the rear wheels are larger than the front, so it's nice to see that the wheels are the same size, giving this car a more realistic look. Next up, for the colour of this car then, it has all been painted in this glossy red colour. It is not metallic at all. And next up, onto the tamper work on the side of this thing then. It's plentiful and it does the job fantastically. So let's get straight into it. First of all, I would like to mention that the door handles of this car do feature tampered on here in black. I would also like to mention that this car's door lock button also does feature tampered on here in silver. Next up, we do have the piece of plastic side trim, which does feature on the real-life Proton Saga, being tampered onto this Hot Wheels model in black. Great attention to detail there from the Hot Wheels team. We also do have the Sega writing being tampered on here in a mixture of white and black, and this has been done in a somewhat 3D look. And the final piece of tamper work featuring on the side of this thing is the Hot Wheels logo, which has been tampered on here in black. But anyways, that is it for the tamper work on the side of this thing then. So now onto the plastic usage and metal casting. So first of all, I will mention that the front and rear bumper of this car has been created through the red base plastic. I would also like to mention that this car's side skirt has also been created through that red base plastic. I'm adding this in during editing, but I thought it might be worth mentioning that this car has more squared off wheel arches instead of the traditional more rounded arches which we see on most cars. Now this does also feature on the real life Proton Saga, and it does give this car a more retro look in my opinion. Next up, I will mention that this car's rear lights do continue around to the side of this car. In the metal casting here, they only continue around to the side of this car a little bit, but they are still there, so I may as well mention it. Next up, I will mention that this car's door handles do actually feature in the metal casting here as well. They are not just simply tampered on there. Next up, I will mention that this casting does have wing mirrors. Awesome to see that on this car indeed. It always makes the car look a lot more realistic in my opinion. I think without wing mirrors, this car would have looked a little bit silly, so it's definitely a good thing to see them here. I would also like to mention that this car's windows are completely wound up on all of the windows, and I would also like to mention that the window plastic of this car is slightly tinted. Hopefully you can see that this car does have black interior plastic, and hopefully you can also see that this car does have two front seats and also does have some rear seats. And hopefully you can see that this car is right-hand drive. Now this is accurate to the real life car, as this car does get made in Malaysia, and in Malaysia they do drive on the right-hand side of their car. And the final thing which I do want to mention is the piece of trim, which does run along the entirety of the side of this car, does continue around to the front of this thing. However, along the side of the car, as I've already mentioned, it has been tampered on there in black, whereas along the front of the car, it has been created through the window plastic. That's a really interesting detail there, which I knew I had to mention once I saw it. But anyways, that is it for the side of this thing, so now let's move on to the front of this car. Alright, so taking a look at the front of this car then, there's plenty of details here in the form of tamper work and also plastic usage. So let's get straight into it. First of all, I would like to mention that the Proton badge does feature here, tampered in a mixture of yellow, black and silver, which is accurate to the real life Proton badge. Next up, I would like to mention that the front grille of this car has been tampered on here in black as well. I would also like to mention that the headlight of this car does continue slightly around to the side of this car, and it has been tampered on there in silver. Now I'm not entirely sure why the Hot Wheels team decided to tamper that in silver. Yes, it is more accurate to the real life car's headlights, however this silver doesn't blend at all with the headlights featuring on this Hot Wheels model, so I personally think they should have tampered it on there in black instead of silver, but that's just my opinion. But anyways, that is it for the tamper work on the front of this thing then, so now onto the plastic usage. So first of all, I would like to mention that the headlights of this car have been created through the window plastic. I would also like to mention that that piece of trim, which we've already mentioned, does continue across the entirety of the front of this car, as I've already mentioned when we were taking a look at it from the side. And the final thing which I do want to mention is the front bumper of this car has been created through the red base plastic. I've already mentioned that, but what's interesting is we do have the license plate holder of this car being molded into that front bumper. You could easily add your own license plate to this car using something like a permanent sticker. We also do have the lower vents of this car being engraved into that plastic as well, in the form of an indentation. And the final thing which you can see is the turn signal or indicator lights of this car do feature molded into this plastic as well, in the form of an indentation. But anyways, that is it for the front of this car, so now let's move on to the next side of this thing. Alright, so taking a look at the next side of this car then, it is the exact same as the previous side, so I'm not going to bore you with going over everything all over again. You can pause the video here and have a look for yourself if you are looking for something specific. The only thing which is different about this side of this car is the fact that the fuel filler cap does feature here, molded into the metal casting. But anyways, that is it for this side of the car, so now let's move on to the rear of this thing. Alright, so taking a look at the rear of this car then, even though there is no tamper work here, there's still plenty of detail in the form of metal casting and also plastic usage. So let's get straight into it. First of all, I would like to mention that this car's rear lights do feature moulded into the metal casting here. You could easily add your own details to these lights using something like Sharpie or acrylic paints. However, I don't think they look too bad, as the entire car has been painted in red, and you will know that rear lights on cars are red, including on this in real life. So it does look like these rear lights have received detailing, even though they haven't. Next up, I will mention that this car's rear license plate holder also does feature in the metal casting here. As I've already said, you could easily add your own license plate to this car using something like a permanent sticker. Next up, I will mention that this car's trunk release button does feature in the metal casting here in the form of a protrusion from the rest of the body of the car. And the final detail which I do want to mention on the rear of this car is that the rear bumper of this thing has been created through the red base plastic. But anyways, that is it for the rear of this thing, so now let's move on to the top of this car. Alright, so taking a look at the top of this car then, the detail does not stop yet. So first of all, I would like to mention that there is no additional detailing on the trunk of this car, it is completely flat. Next up, I would like to mention that this car does have a third brake light, and this third brake light has been created through the black interior plastic. And this third brake light does feature inside of the car, behind the window plastic there. This is accurate to the real life car. Next up, I will mention that this car's roof does not have any additional detailing. Next up, I will mention that this car does have windshield wipers. These windshield wipers do feature in the window plastic. It's really nice to see these here. It's a very small detail, but it does make a massive difference to me, as personally I think it makes this car a lot more complete and also a lot more realistic. Very, very nice to see them on this car. And next up, we do have the windshield washer fluid squirters, featuring in the metal casting here in the form of a protrusion from the rest of the body of the car. And the final detail which we do have here is a bulge in the hood, and this bulge is accurate to the real life Proton Saga. But anyways, that is it for the top of this thing, and that is also it for my showcase of this car. So now let's move on to my final thoughts and review on this thing. Alright, so now it is time for my final thoughts and review on this car. I'm a big fan of this casting, and it's really nice to see this car making its way into the Hot Wheels lineup, and the main reason I say that is because this car is made in Malaysia. Now you're probably wondering why that is significant, and the main reason for that is because the mainlines are actually made in Malaysia. So it's really nice to see the Hot Wheels team giving some appreciation to where the Hot Wheels models actually come from in terms of the factory they are produced in. I also think it's really nice to see some slower, more everyday cars making their way into the Hot Wheels lineup as well. Last year we saw the Volkswagen ID Buzz as a brand new casting, and obviously that car is a little bit slower and more of an everyday car as well. So yeah, I like the direction that the Hot Wheels team are going in terms of new castings. I like the fact that they are adding some more everyday cars into their lineup, rather than just exotic and crazy cars. Of course it's nice to have some crazy cars in the lineup, but I also think there should be a nice balance between those crazy cars and also some nice slower cars like this thing. But yeah, this casting is just really well done. It's super accurate to the real life car, and I love everything about it, to be honest. I love the tamper work. They've done a fantastic job on making this thing look very factory fresh. I also like the fact that the headlights of this car have been created through the window plastic. It just means that once this car does not get any front tamper work, it won't look as bare, and it also won't look as if it's missing as many details, which is always nice. I also like the fact that this casting does have wing mirrors and also does have windshield wipers. Those two details being there will affect my score at the end of this video in a positive way. And yeah, overall this car is just really nice. I like the wheel choice on this thing as well. If you're returning to the channel, you will know that I actually quite like the Aerodisc wheels, especially when they have been painted in white or chrome like this car. So yeah, I do like the wheel choice on this thing. And finally, the colour. I really do think that this red colour was the best way that the Hot Wheels team could have debuted this casting. I think it looks absolutely spectacular. But there you go. Now it is time for my score out of 10. So what am I going to give this car out of 10? It is going to be receiving a totally deserved 10 out of 10. This car just has all the details I could possibly ask for a mainline. It is honestly what I would describe as pretty much perfect. It's just a a really cool car, and I'm super happy that I managed to find this car so early. It's definitely a very sought after one here in the UK as well. Lots of people are looking for these things, and honestly I can't blame people, to be honest. It's a really awesome and cool and also unique casting. But anyways, that is it for this video. So if you guys did enjoy, make sure to like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Remember, you can also press that notification bell so you do not miss new uploads. Remember, you can also share this video with any friends, family, or any groups who may be interested. But remember, don't feel pressure to if you don't feel like you have anybody who may be interested. You watching this video all the way to the end means so much to me, and I really do thank you for making it all the way up until this point. But anyways, that is it for this video, so I really do hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye everyone.